doing? Andy Scott here, otherwise known as AndyRooJ. Today we're going to look at this guitar. It's called an Agile Interceptor Pro 828. So I figure you've been on YouTube and you've seen plenty of video clips now featuring Agile guitars, and you're wondering what's so important about them and why should I care? Now this video clip is for those of you out there that are looking at buying extended range and are wanting to know what your options are. So I'm going to save you a bit of time because I've done a bit of research on the competitors and basically going to compare this guy to the other brands and the other offerings. So let's look at the usual suspects. You've got the Ibanez, the ESP, Jackson and a couple of Schecters. Now I've chosen these ones because they're the closest comparison to the Agile. So they're all EMG 808s, but they're all fixed bridges. Now the Jackson in the middle is probably the closest match. It's a neck through as well, EMG 808s, mahogany quilted maple, small scale and no options of larger scale if you're wanting to detune, and no tremolo options. Now the price comes in at $8.99 US rec retail, so that's $100 more than the Agile. The other thing is it doesn't have the feature wood on the headstock and it's only a rosewood neck. It doesn't have the options of the maple or the ebony. Okay, now before we get too far into it, if you're looking at buying an extended range or an 8-string and you're not familiar with them, let's understand exactly what's going on here. So the 8-string basically means that you've got these extra 2 strings on the bottom. Let me turn that on. B and an F sharp. Now typically on an 8-string, people would like to down tune that F sharp to an E. It now means that you've got an E here, an E here, and an E there. So if you're playing clean, you've got all these options of quite a full E. Now that's slightly out of tune. It's my fault. I haven't done the fine tuning properly. But you can basically add a bit more to chords. We put that on the front pickup. You know, you've got a whole lot more range that you can cover with an 8-string. And typically these things are like... So let's start off with what is this Agile and what is the brand? Firstly, Agile guitars, or these models specifically, they're made in South Korea. They are sold through a company in America called Rondo Music. Now they're the only distributor, which is a bit unfortunate. If they had a distributor over here in Australia, I would have saved $280 in importing tax. Another $200 in shipping. But let's not gripe about that. Let's just look at the guitar and what it is. Firstly, this model being an 828 means it's an 8-string and it has a 28.65 scale. That's pretty long. Typically 8 strings would kick in at about the 26.5, 27 inch scale, which is handy. It's more playable. It's a lot easier to fit your fingers around the frets. You know, something like this is more comparable to a bass. You know, this bass is a 34 inch scale, but still, big frets are big frets. So if you don't have long fingers, you might find that a 28.625 scale is a bit long, a bit awkward to play. That's cool. They make a 27 inch, they make a 28.5, and they make a 30 inch if you've got super huge Steve Vai fingers. That really is the first thing we need to consider about Agile. The sheer variety is almost ridiculous. You've got a choice of a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, yep, you guessed it, a 10. Fanned fret options available from the 7-string up. And that's not all. The choice of colour and finish is amazing. Like if you're going to be spending good money on a guitar, you want exactly what you want. And the sheer amount of options when it comes to finish, feature woods, setup, pickups is just beyond incredible. No other brand even comes close to offering the same amount of variety that Agile does. Okay, back to this guitar. Build quality and playability. The build quality is incredible. So for a guitar that costs $7.99 US, it is arguably equal to or better than the build quality of its $12.99 competitors. Okay, so the basic setup, what are you getting for $7.99? EMG 808s. This same model also has the option of blackouts by Seymour Duncan's. They also have their own house brand called Cephas, either active or passive. They're going to be a bit cheaper than this setup here. So, neck through construction. It's not going the cheap version and just doing a set neck. It's straight up one piece of wood which that string is vibrating on. That gives it incredible sustain. Now, with these models you've got options of fixed bridge, string through that is, or you've got tremolo options. Now I've chosen a Kayla option here, but there's also an 8-string, 7-string, not a 9-string, in the Floyd Rose. The reason why I chose the Kayla is because you can put the screw in the back of it here and it becomes a fixed bridge, it doesn't float anymore. The locking is a bit of a pain in the backside. I'm sort of thinking now, probably would have been better to go a fixed bridge, because the nut here, which I'll show you in close-up, can be a bit of a pain. The strings are so close to the edge of the neck that it might introduce issues when you're playing, especially with a long reach that you've got on an 8-string neck. Now let's look at the neck itself. It's a 5-piece laminate. It's Babinga and Maple. Now on top, in this range, you've got a couple of different options. I've chosen ebony. You've also got a maple option, or you could even go to the rosewood, but the rosewood is typically on the cheaper versions. You can have inlay or no inlay, that's up to you. Feature wood is still on the headstock. It's just that little something else to make the guitar look that much more expensive, well set up. Grover, die-cast machine heads. They are stainless steel, jumbo 2.9mm frets. That's pretty handy. Most of the competitors have the nickel alloy, which is a bit softer, and from constant use you're going to see that trademark denting in between the strings. So the rest of the guitar, it's made out of mahogany. That's pretty much typical for the Scepter and the Interceptor range, to have a mahogany body, unless you ask for something different. This guitar is quite easy to play. It's quite easy on the hand. Although the neck is really wide, it's quite thin. You've got this obvious flat spot through the middle of the neck here, which means your thumb has got a good place to live and slide. Admittedly, having the gloss coating over the neck is a bit sticky. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I'm not about to bust out the 2000 grit and sand it back to a matte finish. On the big scale, getting up the neck, especially up the strings, you notice you've got a lot more tension in the strings now. This is a .009 starting, and it goes down to a .74. Admittedly, you'd probably want to change that to a .80. They do just flap around a little bit, especially on the longer scale. They could really do with a bit more meat in them. You know, it's a bit more of a stretch to down the bottom end, and once you get up the top, that becomes painful because of the sheer tension in the strings. Like, ow! But nevertheless, they still play fairly well. It's just you've got that string tension to deal with. You're really not going to find anything directly comparable with it. It's always going to be more expensive, or it's always going to have a compromise in something. It's going to be a set neck, it's going to be bolt-on, it's going to have nickel frets. It's not going to have a Floyd Rose, a Kayla, or any form of tremolo option for that matter. It's just going to be a fixed bridge. So, check them out. Go to Rondo Music. Man, I should be getting a commission for this. And see what they're all about. So anyway, that's enough from me. Awesome guitar. I'm a fan. Maybe it's worth a bit of a look. Thanks for watching. Check out my channel. Thanks again.